Mira sat in the general manager's office of her family's paper factory. She looked out the window, realizing it was already dark. Since coming home almost a year ago, she had worked tirelessly to implement the logistic solutions that could save the struggling business and increase their customer base. The days were often long, but they were making steady progress. The factory was no longer scraping by. There was enough profit to support her family, and they were even considering expanding operations. Everything was going great, except she missed Seojun a lot. They still talked every day, but it couldn't compare to walking beside him, teasing him, watching his shy smile, or feeling the warmth of his embrace like the night he hugged her goodbye. Mira had told her parents about him, but of course they were skeptical. Now that he was even more famous than before, would he actually leave the label for her? For some reason, though, her parents had seemed more open to the idea these past few weeks. Still, Seojun's contract would be expiring at any moment, but he hadn't brought it up, and she hadn't found the right time to discuss it either. If he decided he couldn't go through with it, would that be the end of their relationship? Mira shuddered at the thought, but shook her head, trying to convince herself to trust Seojun. A knock came at the office door. A sturdy figure stood in the doorway. It was her father, Mr. Mabena. "Hi, Dad," Mira said, smiling when she saw him. "Hey, Mimi, it's time to go home. Your mom made your favorite for dinner," Mr. Mabena replied, striding toward her. Mira glanced at her computer. "You go first, Dad. I still have some orders to look over. They're due tomorrow afternoon." Mr. Mabena sighed affectionately. "You can get them cleared in the morning. I'll help you." "Come on now. You've done enough already," Mira conceded, shutting down her computer and following him out of the already quiet factory. As they got into the car and drove the short distance to the family home, Mr. Mabena couldn't help but feel a strange mixture of pride and sadness. He was proud of the strong, intelligent, and resourceful woman Mira had become, almost single-handedly turning the business around. But he wished she didn't have to carry so much responsibility. Then his thoughts drifted to Seojun, the young man she was seeing, and he sighed, realizing that little Mimi wasn't a baby anymore. As they pulled up to the house, Mira noticed the family's old sedan in the driveway. It was the car her little sister drove. She turned to her father in surprise. "Kaya's home from school? Is Neo here too?" Her father nodded, grinning but looking a little nervous. "Yes, they decided to pay a surprise visit." Mira squealed with delight and raced toward the door. Kaya and Neo, her little sister and brother, were in their senior and sophomore years of college. She hadn't seen them in a few months, so she was ecstatic. As Mira made her way to the living room, she suddenly stopped in her tracks. She heard him before she saw him. The low murmur of a familiar voice reached her ears, and her heart began to pound. Her legs carried her forward until she reached the living room. "Surprise!" a loud voice yelled as a figure enveloped her in a crushing hug. It was her brother, Neo. "Let her go, Neo!" Kaya scolded gently, pulling him away to remind him he wasn't the center of attention. Mira stood still. Her eyes were locked on the man standing next to her mom. It was Seojun. She didn't dare move, afraid she was hallucinating. But then he stepped toward her, smiling shyly, and said, "Hi, Mira," opening his arms. Mira stepped into his embrace and clutched to him tightly. "You came," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "And you waited," Seojun whispered back, feeling like his world was finally whole again. A pointed cough sounded in the room. It was Mrs. Mabena. Mira stepped back from Seojun, blushing. Mr. Mabena had joined his wife on the couch, while Kaya and Neo stood in the corner, giggling. "What's going on?" Mira asked at last, realizing everyone had clearly played her. It turned out that Seojun had gotten in touch with Mira's family a month ago through Yuna's help, and had strongly expressed his wishes to be with her. Finally, her parents had given their blessing, and Seojun had asked to visit and meet the entire family. That was why Kaya and Neo had suddenly come home. As they sat at the dinner table, Mira was still in disbelief. She talked to Seojun every day and never once suspected a thing. He had only told her he was traveling to shoot a video and would be unreachable for a couple of days. And there was also Yuna, her mischievous friend. The thought made her chuckle. She couldn't be mad at them. It was the most beautiful surprise ever. Now she just wished Kaya and Neo would stop giving her silly winks from across the table. When dinner was over, Mira and Seojun stepped out to take a walk in the fields behind her family home. As they watched the flowers sway in the gentle breeze, Mira turned to him and said, "My parents seem to like you." What did you tell them? Seojun wrapped an arm around her waist, pulling her closer as he whispered in her ear, that I love you, and that I want to spend the rest of my life with you, no matter what it costs me. Mira felt breathless under the intensity of his gaze. She managed to ask, so, the contract? I'm done with the label. I'm officially an independent artist, Seojun said. Mira's eyes widened. She hadn't seen any official announcement on his page or the labels. I got them to delay the announcement until tomorrow to keep up the surprise, he said with a grin. From now on, I'm all yours. Mira felt an invisible weight lift from her chest as relief flooded through her. She lifted a hand to his face, her heart swelling with love for this man who had let go of so much to be with her. Seojun kissed the palm of her hand gently and met her gaze. So, what do you say, Mira? Would you like to build a future with me? She wrapped her arms around him, burying her face in his chest, and nodded. Yes, with all my heart. Yes! Almost in tears himself, Seojun pulled a small box from his pocket, went down on one knee, and gestured for her hand. She let him slip the ring onto her finger, beaming with love and excitement. When Seojun stood, he lifted her off the ground and spun her around until she was dizzy, and both of them were laughing breathlessly. They walked back to the house, hand in hand. Mira didn't even need to look up to know her parents and siblings were watching them from the windows. Kaya and Neo were probably making silly jokes right now. She smiled at the thought. Her family was together, the factory was thriving, and Seojun was here by her side. She couldn't wish for anything more. From then on, Seojun split his time between Botswana and Korea, since he had to return to record new songs. He and Mira planned to move to Korea when Kaya graduated and became more involved at the factory. In spite of Seojun's departure from the label, he still managed to gather a few sponsors for a mini concert. His former agent, Juwon, had resigned and chosen to become Seojun's personal manager. The concert was such a roaring success that he received countless offers from sponsors, collaborators, and even record labels. However, he refused to sign with a new label. When Seojun announced his engagement to Mira online, the reaction was as expected. Some fans lashed out in anger and disbelief, clinging to the fantasy of him remaining single. Others, however, rallied in his defense, applauding his courage and condemning toxic celebrity culture. Soon, it became clear that Seojun didn't care for public opinion, and the toxic fans moved on to new targets. A few celebrity friends reached out to congratulate him, some even confessing they wished they had his bravery. When they asked, "How did you do it?" Seojun's reply was simple, "I was more afraid of a life without Mira than I was of losing public support." During this time, Seojun was shocked to receive a call from his father. His dad had rarely picked up his calls since Seojun had disappointed him by pursuing music. On the call, his father told him they were sorry for pushing their expectations on him and were glad he had found both a career and a person that made him happy. Seojun had long forgiven them. He knew that, however misguided their actions had been, they had only wanted to protect him from what they believed was a mistake. He reconciled with both parents and even invited them to the wedding, which would be held a few months later. 2 years later, Seojun stood on the stage at one of Seoul's largest event centers. It was his first major concert since marrying Mira, and every ticket had sold out. As he prepared to sing the closing song, he said, "Tonight I want to sing the song you all know, My Muse. But before that, I'd like to introduce the love of my life, the woman who inspired it, my wife, Mira Mabena." Backstage, Mira froze, instinctively resting a hand on her baby bump. She had never liked being in the spotlight, but when Seojun reached for her hand and coaxed her out, she stepped onto the stage briefly, bowing shyly as the crowd erupted in cheers. She slipped backstage again, watching with a tender smile as Seojun sang the song he had written for her. When he finished, he thanked the audience as they roared with cheers and applause. When he rushed backstage, breathless, he asked her, "How did I do?" Remembering him asking the same question after his small restaurant performance years ago, Mira cupped his face and smiled affectionately. "You were beautiful, Mr. Music Star." He kissed her then, slowly, sweetly, and rested his forehead against hers. Be it fans, critics, or media outlets, they all had different opinions of Seojun. But to Mira, he would forever be the guy whose voice had once woken her in the middle of the night. And to him, she would always be the barefoot, feisty, pajama-clad girl who had knocked on his door. And they wouldn't have it any other way.